Welcome to the Westside Barbell podcast. Today's podcast, I got Jeremy Loper with me. For those of you who don't know Loper, he's been here for, say, what, 8 years? You've been coming out of the gym?
Yeah.
We're very good friends. We've trained together. We started up the Westside, or the Week Things Break podcast. The way events have lied, we've going to merge the Week Things Break into the Westside Barbell podcast, and we feel that this is a great way for people to interact with Westside, get your questions in on certain topics, and having Loper here is going to help us deep dive into them more. So I'd like to thank you for coming in, Loper.
Yeah, man, I couldn't be more stoked to be here. And, you know, the future, I think, is bright.
It is, and it's a different time for sure. And having all the media outlets and to be able to get people's questions in, I know that there's some topics that people don't understand clearly, especially the conjugate method in sports. And having you here been able to really deep dive into the questions and pull out the answers to where I think is easy, but for some maybe not. And with that said, if you want to, we can start up bashing into the questions.
Yeah, so people are hitting us up all over social media, and if you don't know where to find us, you can check it out in the description and find us on whatever social media that you prefer to use. So this one comes from 00 Trucker 0, and he asks, how does a proper warm-up for all 4 days look like? Exercises, sets, reps? Thanks, guys.
It's hard to give an accurate answer, and that's the most frustrating thing for people. Everyone is different when it comes to warm-ups. Anyone who knows Louie did not believe in a long warm-up. You would warm up with whatever the exercise was. A lot of people believe in that. I believe in that pretty strongly. But I do know for some athletes, they need to warm themselves up to prepare for the workout.
Yeah.
That's why we got some universals. You got sleds, you got hypers, you got abs that people do. But there's no specific length, time, sets, reps that's going to be accurate for that person. So I would say find what works and don't read too much into it. If you need to warm up for 30 minutes to get you into it, that's just a waste of time. I would say keep it short and sweet and to the point. When
I first started training at Westside, I thought that the sleds absolutely were the devil. I mean, like I've been through so many workouts in my life, and when I was pulling the sleds, like I had never felt the way that I felt afterwards. I was almost like, that wasn't the workout. It's almost like the warm-ups for jiu-jitsu. Yeah. You know, you do the warm-ups and you're like, oh, now we're actually going to do class. Oh, okay. Yeah, so it's kind of the same thing for me with the sleds. I really always felt like the sleds got everything loose and warm, and you were just ready to go after that.
And it's easy to scale.
Yeah.
Right? You just, there's no compression, there's nothing. You're just dragging a weight around, but it's warming up the whole body. Some people do warm-ups to mentally prepare themselves more than physically prepare themselves. So whatever it is you need to get out of it, just do it. Just keep it short. And sleds are the best universal for upper and lower body too. Yeah, I'm with you. We had a lot of people who said, oh, that's not the workout. But for warm-ups, we're between anywhere 5 to 10 minutes, and that's it. We're into the task.
Okay, so the next one comes from Instagram. This is a B&B 1980s question. Could using 65, 70, and 75% without bands and or chains, would that be a good idea for a dynamic effort as a main lift?
You can. If you don't have access to bands or chains, you can do straight weight percentages as long as you're moving the bar fast enough. And if you need a frame of reference, you can get a Tendo unit.
Yeah.
We try aim for 0.7 to 0.8, but again, they're reference points. You can. We would rather use bands because bands do stuff to your body that forces you down faster and you come up faster, and they're not forgiving.
The explosion.
So, yeah, you have to be fast going through the full range of motion. Again, it's preference and availability of the exercises. Our equipment, bands are pretty easy to get nowadays, so I would stick with bands if you can. But it's not wrong to do them straight weight, but you will get way more out of it if you use bands.
And just for depth, why does the speed of the bar matter?
So strength is measured in speed and time and weight. There's different ways to do it. But what speed you're moving at determines what type of strength you're training. There's speed strength, strength speed, explosive strength, and they're all measured in velocities, right? So if you're moving it too slow, then you're training the wrong speed for speed day. So you're trying to train speed strength. That makes sense. So the Tendo unit gives you a reference point of speed strength is trained between 0.7 and 0.8 meters per second. So it gives you that reference. Now, where it gets kind of confusing is The two of us are made up differently in that you might be way faster than I am. So I get on a tendo unit and I'm dreadfully slow. And after a few weeks of training, I increase a little bit, but still not faster than you. And if we compare ourselves together, I'm screwed because I think, oh, I'm not going as fast as Loper.
Yeah.
And this is where people get confused. Like, well, I got to reduce the weight to where you got nearly nothing on the bar to achieve that same bar velocity. Well, that's not going to carry over to athleticism. If I'm a slow person and I get a little bit faster, that's a huge deal to me. And it usually makes me more athletic compared to someone who is just comparing numbers and like, oh, okay, I'm not getting anything from it because I haven't got enough stimulus on the bar or in the exercise to get anything from it. So everything we give are guidelines. Nothing's ever set in stone. And we have that, we're band percentages. We're like, well, can I do 27.5? Can I do 30? It's rule of thumb. It's to give you an idea. Like, there's no one here with a magnifying glass going, hey, it's got to be here. The one thing that we're critical on is volume. Volume is huge all over. But back to your question of the velocity is there, so you're training the correct strength.
So it doesn't really matter. Like, you have to train specifically for your style.
Yeah, and that's the most frustrating thing, because if you got an answer that goes, it depends, you're like, of course, it's a simple way out, but it does. There's general things we can talk about, but what makes us so good at what we do is we bring in the person, we assess them individually. So we're asking all the right questions to train Loper, so we're getting all the right answers.
Yeah. Right.
If we have general questions, well, then we're going to train you generally and you'll be a general athlete. We want you to be the best. So that's when it becomes specific.
Okay. Next question comes from Hamzer Dupree. How do programs jump? How to program jumps and how to program conditioning and extra workouts? How does that generally work for you?
So we jump at least twice a week, and it's usually on lower body day. So we have a max effort lower, and we got a dynamic effort lower. We try to do it after the main movement.
Yeah.
So that way there's a certain level of fatigue, but you're not too fatigued to get through it. We usually do 4 sets of 10, depending on what level of athlete you are. If you're a beginner, you'll wind that down maybe to 2 sets of 10 or 4 sets of 5 to do about 20 jumps. We always jump up onto a box. We very rarely do depth jumps, because with depth jumps, there's a level of risk when you do them, and you need to have a high level of strength to be able to get anything from them. And then conditioning.
Are they dangerous because of like fatigue?
No. So if you do a depth jump, you're jumping off a height to the ground. So gravity is not really your friend, depending on your weight. So when you hit the ground, that's a lot of impact into the ground. But when you jump from the ground onto a box, you're exerting a lot of force to raise your weight up onto it. When you land on the box, you land softly. So there's very little impact. So there's a lot of carryover. So because you're breaking gravity, so you have to have that inertia to push through and to lift off and to land. So you're landing softly, but you're developing a lot more types of strength when you're jumping. So depending on how fast and how high you jump, you can set it up to where you can match the type of strength you're trying to get out of it. But jumping in general is a great way. Jumping and deadlifts, there are 2 ways that we monitor athletes' progression. If we know how high you can jump and how strong you are in your sumo deadlift, it gives us a good overall idea of your athleticism, if it's going in the right direction. And the conditioning aspect to that is we try to keep training dense. As you know, that our rest periods are pretty short, and we try to maximize that 1 hour. So the conditioning aspect could literally be going from exercise to exercise to exercise, supersets, triple sets, or time, depending on the sport. But we try to regulate it within 1 hour. We try to get the most amount of stuff done in that hour period possible.
When people say box jumps, there's one athlete at Westside that I think of, and that's the newly signed AJ Dobson to the UFC. I mean, there's been some video, I'm pretty sure, on our Instagram page at Westside Barbell.
AJ jumped on a 62.5. We've had Joe Pierce, I think it was his last name, jumped on a 63.5. And then there's 2 athletes that I can't use because I'm not allowed to say their names, but we've had one on a 67 and one on a 68 that I couldn't claim. We couldn't claim the record from. Lose guys on that, but we've had some phenomenal jumpers here, and some of these guys are just naturally just gifted at it.
Oh, absolutely. It's incredible to watch too. Yeah. It really is. All right, so the next question comes from CrossFit Fate. Who did Louie hand Westside down to? AKA, who's in charge moving forward? That's the question of the hour, really.
It depends on what way you look at Westside. The way I see it is you got Westside Barbell HQ, the business, and then you got Westside Barbell, the gym. So I've been very fortunate to be around Lou for the past 12 years. That the honor has been bestowed onto me to make sure the legacy continues on. We got Harold running the business, the HQ side of things, and then I'm just overviewing that the gym, the legacy, Louie's name, and what all the members have done here for the gym never is forgotten, and we're trying to educate the coaches. I can't really say that there's one person, because Westside is a multitude of people who've created the education that we have now based on their input into training. But I would say if anything goes wrong, it falls on my head more so than anyone else's. So it's a huge responsibility and a huge honor. And my goal is to make every previous member proud of the gym that they trained at and gave to, and to make sure every coach and every visitor gets as much education possible.
Yeah, and the cool thing I think that Louie was always such a genius about is he surrounded himself with the right people. Yeah. In every different aspect of training. And anything that he needed, something that he felt they were a master in, they were here. And I think that's really where you came in. And not only did you come with a wealth of knowledge from Ireland, but you came in also as a sponge. And you were able to soak up everything that Louie would lay down to you, really. I mean, for me, this is just me speaking. Mm-hmm. I mean, like, it was totally impressive to see you over the last 8 years come to America and find your place here and train, and then be at such a high level where you're able to take over the reins of the team. And I mean, it's a huge credit to you, but also I think it's a credit to him as a master, or as a sensei, as a teacher.
Yeah, Louie had a very different way of teaching. Initially, it was up to you to find your own way, which was like, okay. And then my first 3 months here, I thought, I got this down. And then time is the biggest teacher, and he knew that. He would allow me to voice my opinion, right or wrong. He would allow me to take risks. He would give me every excuse to walk out the door, you name it. But he would pressure test every aspect of you. Loyalty was the big one. And I wasn't just loyal to Lou, I was loyal to Westside Barbell, the club, which is a big thing, is that I understand fully that Westside is a culmination of every training group that's came here. And I think Louie respected that. I viewed it holistically. Not just it was Louie's, it was every member. And to me, the older generations are so important, because they're the guinea pigs. They're the guys that set the foundation of what we have on. And I have huge respect, and I love talking to these people because you get their stories and insights. The business, Louie cared about the gym. The business was like, hey, if you can figure something out, I'm like, okay. And YouTube, books, you name it, we did it, and we grew it to where it's at. And Harold and his team do a hell of a job now, making sure that I keep in check and they keep the business going in the right direction. But that was just Lou. Louie, he would figure out if you can stand the test of time. And you got to think, I was around Lou, especially the first 8 or 9 years here, every day. It wasn't just in the gym. It was just outside the gym. We'd talk, we'd break down sports, we'd talk about business. He would give me some absolutely insane life advice. Some of it was great, some of it was, there's no way in hell I can do that. But that was just Lou. But he wanted to see who you are as a person.
Sure.
And I remember my 7th year here was when, like, oh, stuff started going. I'm like, I have an idea of what he's doing. And really the last year, we hit it off to where, like, okay, I understand how much of an idiot I was as a kid. And I see people who've come in through here, stayed here for a few years and gone and think they know it. I'm like, no. There's so many layers to Louie and his style of teaching and philosophies that the longer you're around him, the more you sort of respect it. And like loyalty and giving credit back to the club and not taking yourself too serious that you can't make mistakes, you can't try these things. And God knows he let me make enough of them along the way to where we are here today. And like my biggest one was printing books for him. I printed 3,000 books with no table of contents and no book numbers. And to say I'm booking my ticket and I'm gone. I won't say
what's his response to that.
Oh, it was interesting. He's like, I can't fucking sell these. Got no. Where's the numbers? And I'm like, that's a good point. Where are the numbers? I offered to handwrite the numbers on. He looked at me like, why would you handwrite them? And we ended up we donated those books. But he allowed me to learn from that lesson.
Right.
I can assure you, we've had a table of contents and book page numbers since. But he wasn't afraid to take risks, and he wasn't afraid to take risks to see if you could do it. And he's had people who've came in here, have taken advantage, and we all know the people who are trying to take advantage of his name since his passing. But those are people who had a short time in here. And the core group of people who grew up, and this is something we can get into later, but Westside used to be based on strength of character, and they built up that family, that relationship, and then they just got ungodly strong. And I think you got to a point in time where you were so strong as a group, to get into the group, you needed to be strong, but you got strong somewhere else. So you didn't necessarily have the same code of ethics and the same mentality. And I think that clashed. You had a clash of the generations coming in, and I can understand where the tensions could get high and people didn't like each other or whatever happened. But to me, that core group of Westsiders, the people who started it, from the late 70s, 80s, 90s, like that's what set the mindset of what Westside is, and then everyone else really just benefited off. Hoff is the only really exception because he came here at such a young age, and he was sheltered certain in the night crew. He had Bob Coe, he got Gritty, all these people, and look, he's like pound for pound like the best powerlifter in the world. But coming back full circle it's a huge responsibility and honor, and it's basically we act as a caretaker now to make sure the gym, everything goes forward, and education is the #1 goal, is to pass on everything.
Most people know it's here on the west side of Columbus, Ohio, the gym. Originally, where was Westside Barbell?
Oh, geez. So Westside was taken from, Westside Barbell was originally in Culver City, California. You had George Friend, Bill Peanuts West. They created that club, and out of respect to the club when it died off, Louie took the name and made Westside Barbell here. From what I gather is when Louie first had a gym, it was known as Louie on the Hill because he's up in the hilltops. And so they came to the Westside Barbell. So people would say,
I'm going to go train with Louie up on the hill.
I think I got the address correctly, but 590 Larkham was the house where a lot of it started.
So just straight up at Lou's house?
In the basement.
In the basement.
And we have stories coming up with Jimmy Seitzer and Bill Whitaker and Gary Sanger that talk about they started in the basement. There's different stories, but I believe a barbell went through the ceiling and into the kitchen, and that was enough. And they're doing plyometric jumps up and down the staircase, and Doris was like, you guys got to go
up and down the staircase is my favorite. Dude, that's so crazy.
And so then it was in the garage of 590 Larkham, and that's really where all these interesting people met and came. And then I believe it went from Larkham to Briggs, and from Briggs Road to Demarest, and then from Demarest to where we're at now off Valley View Drive. But it's always been in the west side of Columbus.
I think we might need a 590 Larkham t-shirt, man.
I mean, the amount of people that came out of 590 Larkham, the biggest characters, the stories from each one of these people who trained at that time, man, they all still talk to like their family. It's amazing, like that group atmosphere.
There is something special about that, right? Like more than just training, you're actually interconnected with the people.
It's up to really Valley View, the Demarest crew, the Briggs crew, the 590 Lark. All those guys are so tightly knit. And I think it goes back down to strength of character. Once you came in and bust your ass and trained, that was a huge thing. When you start introducing people who got strong elsewhere, I think that's when you kind of lost the culture aspect of like, you weren't brought up in fire.
Gotcha, yeah.
But you're just strong. So now you're coming in, matching strength for strength. And I'm not sure of the friendships that were developed in the last maybe 15 years, 12, like if they're as strong as those guys. But yeah, that 590 Larkham was the really the genesis of what Westside Barbell is.
Yeah, and also I think it was here where where Louie really introduced the conjugate method to other athletes, right, outside of powerlifting.
Yeah, and I think it's I've talked about this with someone I hugely respect, and I don't want to name drop his name because I want him to present it. But when you had the two different generations, the strength of character and the strength of just people who are physically strong come together, I think something got lost, but that opened up Louie's mind and like, okay, I can have strong people here because the gym has got to this level of strength. So you're going to come in, we're going to get strong people. But like, I want a challenge now because we developed this group. We developed these morals, this code of ethics that here's how a gym runs. I wonder, can I do this with football players? And I think by having strength athletes, like powerlifting and football is pretty similar to how you train. They came. And then with football players came track and field. I mean, track and field. So it just naturally evolved that he built this solid foundation of training principles and gym ethics. And you have a PhD in the weight room, like of how to load plates, how to spot, what your job is. That's one thing people take for granted. When you walk into the weight room here, anyone who's a member, been around Westside, everyone has a job. They know how to run a weight room really well. So introducing that into track and field, into MMA. MMA is such a lot, and boxing, such a logical sport to come in. Was
it Mark Coleman and Kevin Randleman, the first fighters that came
Coleman
to Westside?
Never came in.
Okay.
Coleman and Louie talked. Randleman was one of the first. There's a few other people that came in and out too that I can't remember their names.
It's funny, now that you say that about Coleman, I totally remember that story. Because Coleman said it was like a nightmare. His phone would ring and it would be Louie telling him to get his ass over to train. He's like, I don't want to go through it, brother. Yeah. After he saw what Randleman went through, and Louie kind of looked at Randleman as like one of the most freak athletes that ever came through here, right?
One of Louie's, and Louie didn't really have regrets looking back, but he would have loved to have tested Randleman's box jump. He said he would have crushed all the records he had. But I don't think there's been a sport that hasn't come through here. But that opening allowed Louie to experiment more and really get into. And every injury Louie got, or every injury these athletes got, the better the system is. None of us would be here today if it wasn't for the negative aspects. Like injuries occurring, like Louie breaking his back twice, the reverse hyper coming out. All these events have led to what we have today. And that's an important part for people to understand, is that we are benefiting from those who have put themselves through the grinder and, well, how do I come back from this? Because before that, if you'd have broken back, and you're like, well, what am I going to do? You're like, you're screwed. And like Louie's like, well, fuck you, I'm going to figure this out. And he came back, and not in a pretty unorthodox way, but yeah, I'm going on a bit, but like our goal here as a Westside is to keep everything moving forward in a new direction. The podcast, the way we're going now, having you on board allows people to get in their questions, interact more so with us now, and hopefully we can illuminate the answer they need.
But before Louie passed, he laid out exactly how he wanted things to go.
Yeah, if you failed to plan, you plan to fail. And Louie had everything laid out. There's a few things he left in to test where we're going to go, but vast majority, and we have that plan as an article out. He had everything that was important to him laid out, and anything he left, any bit of he left open for us was I think a little present from him to go, hey, here's a new challenge for you.
Exactly. Even in death, there's a challenge.
Oh yeah, look, this man. Yeah, he left some things, and I won't go into it, but I got a pretty good laugh out of it when I started thinking about, oh, you bastard, you did everything, you did this on purpose. Like, and that's just Lou. He was a ultimate jokester to the end.
He was never a guy to walk around and like really relish in his own success, but the last couple of years, I mean, you can't really go to like a UFC event or to like the Arnold here in Columbus or any other big powerlifting event or anything like that, sporting wise, without seeing a Westside Barbell T-shirt. What do you think? Just your opinion. What do you think that meant to Lou?
Oh, it meant the world. One is that you're bringing his dog Nitro into the gym. That's what the shirt came from, his dog passing in the gym. And Nitro is there's so many stories from those members of that dog. That was the big thing, is like, oh, you're bringing Nitro in training with you, and wherever you go with that shirt, you're bringing his dog. That was huge to him. Seeing the reach that he has, the amount of people he's helped, I think he would even be astonished. Like, we have thousands of messages, mail, things come in here thanking him for how Lou helped. I don't think he ever realized how big he was and how much people he helped. There's some information he just gave in passing that he can't remember that completely changed people's lives. Like, you have people who were going nowhere became Olympic athletes off like a 2-minute conversation, which there's a lot of these stories. But it meant a lot. It meant a lot that his books got out there, his information got out there. Everything was a podcast. Everything. Hey Tom, are we going to do a podcast? I'm like, what do you mean? So if there's a camera and a microphone, it was a podcast.
That's fine. But tell people, like, in the beginning, it wasn't like that. He didn't want anything to do with this.
About 3 years to go, like, we're not fucking doing that.
Was it the first? Because me and Matt Brown did that one podcast with him when Matt and I were doing a podcast.
We just started.
Okay.
And he got into it, and then we had he knew Joe Rogan from UFC, had no idea how big his podcast was. He's like, I'm not going there. So Joe came here when we had the back room, and Lou just didn't. He had his own universe, and he invited you into it because everything was about making people better, athletes better, and everything else was a distraction. So he just eliminated all distractions in his life. He liked cars.
He did like cars.
And that, like, cars, it was Doris, his dog, cars, the gym. That's it. That was, but the gym was the number one. How can we make people better? How can we train? We went to a CrossFit event. I was in Columbus, and it was just so funny seeing Lou going, what all the people. And he would go and
all the people that were like excited to see him.
Well, and he goes, hi, I'm Louie Simmons. And everyone's like, yeah, we know you're Louie Simmons. But everyone, he always introduced himself, never assumed that people knew who he was.
Yeah, I love that.
We met Travis Badgent, like an arm wrestler there. He introduced himself. Like, everyone knows who Louie is, but Louie has got he's like, gee, look at all these people. And then the hilarious thing was, he's like, there's no fucking good food here. Like, there's a bunch of food stands that are so healthy. He was like, why are you supposed to eat? And he's like, what is this? And Rich Froning was competing that day, and he blew his mind, seeing how in good shape Rich was. And that kind of opened up Lou to, like, understanding that CrossFit is a sport of GPP. Mm-hmm. And it kind of hit him there at that event. He's like, oh my God, this is the sport of GPP. This is why he can carry over to a bunch of things. But yeah, he never took himself too seriously at all. And he loved shit talking too. That was his second hobby, was just talking pure and utter shit to get you so aggravated that, like, this man is so annoying, and it would just bring him so much joy.
Yeah, going into my world, like the world of, like, rock and roll and heavy metal and stuff. You and I went to see my buddy Jamie Josta from Hatebreed in concert, and Zakk Wylde's Black Label Society was also playing on that show. And we went backstage and went on Zakk's bus, and that led to later Zakk coming to Westside, and just how excited he was to meet Lou, like, blew my mind. I mean, we're talking about the guy who played guitar for Ozzy Osbourne. Yeah. And, you know, that just kind of goes to show you, like, the universal effect that he had on people just all around the world.
That, and I will say when Struggle, Jennings and Jelly Roll, having those guys talk about and wear Westside, that meant so much. Lou couldn't believe it. And, like, to have Louie drive in listening to their music, you're like, what is going on? Because it's Louie, and so that meant a lot. And there's a lot more of these stories that are coming out of the work. There's a lot of stuff that I didn't know that just blows my mind, of the depths of people that came here, because Louie didn't know who half these people were, and he treated everyone the same.
Totally.
So, like, you could be a famous actor, a famous sports star, or you could be from down the street. Everyone's the same. So, like, they were here, and, like, yeah, because again, everything is about making people better. So what gets stored in his brain is a story or something that contributes to making people better. So if you're famous, it doesn't matter. But if you've done something in the gym to help someone, or something, he remembers that. He had a strange hierarchy of how he stored knowledge. But we have people reaching out still like, oh yeah, we can't. I'm like, you were at Westside? I'm like, and I talked to Doris, like, oh yeah, I think they came. And like Lou was just of no interest, on to the next one. He never looked back, always forward.
That's awesome. All right, we have another question here. This one comes from Tommy Schroeder. Do you recommend everyone to train twice a day?
No. Again, back to that. It's all depends. If you have the time, you can. MMA, take that for instance. You don't have that luxury because you train with us in the morning. You've got so many other disciplines to do that if you do another workout late at night, you're just going to end up to not being able to recover. But if you have a sport that allows you to break up the morning into 2 trainings, yes, you can. But normally we get enough done in the morning to do it. And if they do stuff at night, it's literally just trying to work on some lagging group. But off the bat, until I know the person, I would say no, get enough done in the morning. That should be it. If you can, it's a luxury, get another one in, but on average, no.
All right, here we go with the real George Buzza. How to build a beginner conjugate template. He would like to know. How do you do that? And I'm just reading these as they're written, by the way, just so everybody knows.
I would get on our website. We got blogs and articles that go through how to start. There is no beginner way. You just start into it.
The Conjugate Club is such a wealth of information.
Yes, the Conjugate. Yeah, the membership site is a good way to go too. But if you want to get into it without spending any money, go through all our articles and blogs and social media. There's enough stuff there to get you started. The system works for beginners and expert levels. It's all scalable. It's all based on how strong you are. It's not based on how strong you think you are, which we get a lot of people, well, I have a perceived max effort of 500 pounds. Well, until you deadlift 500 pounds, you don't deadlift 500 pounds. So this whole system works on objective data. So no matter what your strength level is, and Louie talked about that, if you squat 400, you can be in the same workout as someone who squats 1,000 because it's all based off your strength. It's all based off those percentages. But I would start with our blogs, start with our articles. It's a great place to go.
All right, from Puppus Daddy. Maybe it's Pup US Daddies. I'm not sure. What's the best advice for beginners who want to build strength?
Start. Just start and be consistent.
Yeah, because there's a lot of people out there that kind of talk about it for a long time before they actually get into the gym.
Just get in there, and consistency rules everything. You don't have to believe in how we train, how someone else trains. If you go in there and you start and stop, that's your problem.
Yeah.
Be consistent and just start. You don't know where to start, pick anywhere and start there and keep it simple. That's the best, because anything else will make this complex. Yeah. Start, be consistent, and start anywhere.
Make yourself accountable. You know, I think one of the best stories I heard came from the guy who played Al Bundy on Married with Children, Ed O'Neill, who is a jiu-jitsu black belt. And he said, like, the classes were so rigorous for him after acting all day. And I think he was doing Modern Family at the time. He said that, you know, every time he would go, he'd feel like, oh man, I'm not in shape to do this. But he would go and park in a place where everyone in the gym, as soon as he pulled up, could see him immediately. So right there, he knew if he left, fucking everybody in the gym already saw his car, his face out there. And if he left, he's a coward. And he kind of held that over himself as a motivator to get there every day and to make himself get out of the car and get into the gym and do his thing.
It's the consistency is the one thing that separates everyone else. The professional athletes, they're professionals because they're consistent. And then there's different levels of athletes. The ones who train all the time, do all that, like they rise and rise and rise. And you got people who never get any better. But being consistent, if that could be the training method, it'd be the best training method there is. Just be consistent and start. As you said, so many people talk and talk. I'm like, great, go do it, and then go from there.
Absolutely. All right, so Fitness Fusion 24/7. He hit us up on Instagram and said wheelbarrow training. Benefits, variations?
Wheelbarrows have been a big part of our GPP for sure. There's a lot of variations. You can do them for shrugs, for shoulder rolls. You can carry them like a rickshaw. You could do it for, you could work up to a max exertion to where You start from point A to point B with as much weight as you can. Yeah, they're a huge part, especially for MMA and track and field. Like they play a huge part into it. I know a lot of strongmen do heavy wheelbarrow walks and yoke walks. Yeah, I mean, you put them in, we rotate them in, rotate them out. They're not there all the time, but we do get a lot of carryover, especially for conditioning.
Yeah, I love it for shrugs, like you were saying. Yeah. I think it's way better for me than a regular deadlift bar or something.
Yeah. And for grip, we've had people wrap tear sleeves off jiu-jitsu gis, put them around the handles, so you're holding that and it's moving too as you're walking. So there's a lot of stuff you can do. Your imagination will the only one that can limit you with that.
Well, that's our questions that we picked out for this week. So find us on social media, however you find us, whether it's YouTube, Instagram, or on Twitter, Facebook, if you still use that. You guys can send messages to us and ask any questions about the conjugate system, ask any Westside questions that you may have.
Perfect. Loper, thanks for coming in.
Yeah, man, I'm so glad to be a part of it. And, you know, we're going to be doing these more on a regular basis. So look forward to interacting with everyone.
Awesome.